This interview took place on February 29th, 2024 at Hunters Creek Middle School as detectives investigated the disappearance of Madeline Soto.
Today's date is February 29th, 2024. The time is 13:02 hours. It's going to be reference to Orange County case number 24-011313. I'm Detective Bradshaw with the Orange County Sheriff's Office. Ma'am, could you state your first and last name for me, please?
Madsion Brady.
Could you spell Madison for me?
Madison.
And then Brady, Brady?
Yes.
Okay, and what's your birthday? And my understanding is you are... We're here today to kind of talk about the situation that's involved. I have a couple of specific questions that I have to ask you. But can you tell me a little bit about, like, you know, what you know, your relationship with her is, just any information that you could give me on that?
So I met her at the beginning of this school year in an ESE meeting. She was being transferred over from 504. That she was under that in 6th grade with our 6th grade counselor, Miss Merritt.
Okay. Transferring
over at the beginning of this year to the ESE services with our ESE staffing specialist, Miss McGregor. So I was sitting in on that meeting. In that meeting, they approved that switch and she got switched over. I heard a little bit about her background in terms of having ADHD, a lot of problems with focus that affects her schoolwork and grades. And then some mental health concerns in terms of a lot of anxiety and panic attacks. So from there, I have been doing ongoing check-ins with her throughout the school year thus far. I think we've met about, I was looking at it earlier, 6 times.
Okay, since the beginning of the school year?
Correct.
Got it, okay.
When she has come to me, it's often been those feelings of panic. She's come to me like in the middle of class or during lunchtime just feeling really panicked, kind of heavy breathing, feeling really overwhelmed. And when we've had our conversations about, well, what's going on, what's making you feel this way, I've gotten responses saying, well, it's my anxiety, sometimes I don't know, I'm just really overstimulated with all the noise in the cafeteria. But I've also gotten responses with, well, things at home with her, and when I pressed about that, it seemed to be things along the lines of, well, she gets upset that I'm forgetful or that I don't clean my room the way she wants me to. And we talked about what that does to affect her, and she says, yelling, that makes me get overstimulated and then I can't respond to her in a way that she wants me to. So we discussed strategies for kind of calming herself down and talking. She's calm about how that makes her feel, and she reported to me that she did have that conversation for our past check-in since December. So December, January, February, we had a check-in every single month, and each of those check-ins she had said to me, things are better at home and things are a little bit better at school, and I haven't had her come to me in months with any sort of panic or anxiety. I did have her mention on occasion her home situation. At that time was when I asked her about that. The only thing she really said was, I don't really like him. He's kind of weird. So I said, okay, well, what does that mean? How is he weird? Why don't you like him? And her responses were nothing of that level of concern. It was always, well, he eats all of our food and he hangs out in the living room and it makes me uncomfortable because I don't really like him, so I don't want him to be there. But nothing ever to the level of concern that we're seeing now. And the last thing I heard about him was he's moving out. I'm happy about that, and that's helping me feel better with home.
When was that conversation that he was moving out?
That was about a couple of months ago, so I would say around December.
Okay, so sometime in December, you guys had a meeting and she said, okay, got it. Did she ever mention anything to you about having depression or like suicidal thoughts or any suicidal attempts or anything like that?
She never mentioned anything along those lines. It was always more so focused on the anxiety and the panic.
Okay.
And a lot of times she wasn't able to verbally articulate what exactly was making that panic arise beyond feeling overstimulated or just not knowing.
Okay, so she never mentioned to you about wanting to hurt herself, wanting to die, wanting to, nothing like that?
She never mentioned wanting to harm herself or wanting to die. She made comments in the interactions where she was feeling panicky, saying things more so like, you know, this hurts and I don't like this or want to deal with this, but it was never anything like I want to hurt myself or end my life or anything along those lines.
Gotcha. Okay. And she didn't disclose that she was taking medication for anything other than just the anxiety, or for the ADHD and the anxiety.
I didn't talk to her specifically about medication, and I can't recall what was said. It would be in the ESC meeting notes if it was discussed that she was or wasn't on medication.
And she has an IEP, you said, correct? So she switched from the 504 to the IEP.
Yes.
Gotcha. Cool. Okay. Did she mention anything about just didn't like him because he ate their food and he was in their living room? Like, did she say anything else to you? Disclose anything to you?
She did not. She didn't talk about, asked her about those comments of him being weird and uncomfortable. The only things she gave me were, well, I don't know, he's just a little weird. He eats our food and he's always hanging out in the living room and I don't really want to be around him, and nothing. And the way she said it was so like joking in terms of like, I don't know, he's weird type situation, like laughing about it. It never made me feel like there was a safety concern.
Okay, so she didn't disclose anything about him ever touching her inappropriately, or them having any sort of a sexual relationship, or them having any sort of an inappropriate relationship whatsoever.
No,
none of that was ever disclosed or
anything along
brought
those
up
lines.
to you. Okay. Let me check and see. There's, like I said, there's some other questions that I have to ask, and I just want to make sure that I touched on them. Okay, did you ever see, I know we talked about like the anxiety and the panic attacks, and you said she never, mentioned anything about being depressed or being suicidal or anything. Did you ever see her exhibit any of those behaviors, like that she is depressed, or that she, like, did you notice anything about her that was out of the ordinary other than the things we've already talked about?
It seemed more so to be very up and down.
Okay.
Like she would have those heightened moments of the panic and the crying, and just kind of, she would go from that to just like shutting down after the panic. And then if you talked her through it a little bit, like there's one specific instance in my statement that she could not say what was making her feel that way. And so I asked her to draw it out, and she was able to do that.
Okay.
And then she kind of put on there just like a lot of scribbles, which to her, she said that meant just like the chaos of all the feelings and thoughts that she's having that make her feel overwhelmed. And then words she wrote. So things along the lines of like, why, or crying and things like that. And after that happened, I reached out that she wasn't at school for a couple days. So I was like concerned of, okay, we went from this to now being out. What is happening? I reached out, and at that point, he's been struggling lately, a lot of tears and feelings, but that she was seeing a weekly therapist.
Okay.
So she supposedly had someone that she was seeing weekly about all of this.
Okay.
And also stated at that point she hadn't been at school because she was sick, and she was going to take her to the doctor that day. And she mentioned seeing the drawing that from our conversation, and I encouraged her to share that with mom, so she did. And she said that she appreciated that, and that helped her in that day, which at the end of that conversation with her, she was able to calm down and feel better. But at that point, that's when it got a little concerning, to the point that I reached out to mom just to say, hey, what's going on? And found out, okay, she at least has supposedly weekly therapy sessions outside of school.
And most of these things you said that would trigger these panic attacks or these anxiety-inducing issues were because of issues that were going on with them, correct? Like where she would argue with.
It seemed to be a combination of bringing that from home, the arguments and the feeling like she's taking on those feelings at home of, I don't feel safe in terms of not necessarily physically safe, but emotionally safe, that at me and causing me to feel overstimulated. And then I come to school and it's loud and there's lots of kids and I'm overstimulated again.
But it wasn't. It's usually Gotcha.
And things she said along the lines of, my room's not clean, or you forget to do this, or you don't do that. So to me, that's like things about it was never,
especially at that age, with the teenage age, you know. Okay, so how about her grades or her behavior? Have you noticed any shift in her grades or the behavior that she would normally exhibit?
Grades have seemed stable. We've been working on, in our check-ins, kind of coming up with strategies because of her ADHD and in terms of getting her missing work in to bring up the grades. And she seemed to be making improvements with that since around December, when she started reporting things are better at home, at school.
Okay.
Our last check-in was February 6th, I believe, and at that point, she was very happy that day. I called her down just to do our check-in, and she said things are going really well. She feels really happy. Things are better. Things are better at school. And that was the last time we had a check-in.
And that was because of the strategies that you had kind of given her to help her?
Yes, she had been getting some of that work in. Her teachers are working with her because she has the IEP, and she said that she used the strategies at home to talk about the, when we're calm, let's talk about what it's like when we're not calm and how that makes us feel.
Gotcha.
And she says she was able to successfully do that.
Good. That's excellent. Okay. I know we talked a lot about, like, you know, kind of just briefly mentioned with her. And I know you've only known her for a short period of time, but you haven't noticed a dramatic shift from when you first met her to now that's negative. Like, have you?
Correct. When this first came up, my first thoughts are, oh, things have been better. So I'm like,
so it's surprising to you, it sounds like.
How did
we get to this point?
Yes.
Okay, so there's nothing that would stand out to you that would make you think that something was on, like that things were declining at home. You actually thought things were actually getting better based on what she was telling you.
From the information that I had from her, without at that point having spoken to friends or anything I had, to me the perception was things are getting better.
And what was the last date that you met with her?
February 6th.
Okay. And that was the date that she was like, hey, things are getting better. We're using these strategies at home and all of that. Got it. Okay.
We were supposed to have our next session to follow up this week. Okay. And obviously I haven't been able to do that.
Okay. Is there anything else you can think of that I have not asked you that you want to relate to me while I have you in here?
To me, the only things that are just sticking are the comments of, he is weird and I don't like him. And I wish I had more information to say where that came from, but when I asked that, all I got was, he eats our food, he hangs out in the common areas.
Okay. All right. Do you swear and affirm everything you told me is true to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So the time is now 13:15 hours.
Thanks for watching. Please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss new content.